हेलो दोस्तों, बिगनर्स माइंड में आपका स्वागत है। और अभी हम कर रहे हैं इकोनॉमी। इससे पहले पढ़ चुके थे, अब यहाँ से स्टार्ट करेंगे। दिस कैन बी इलस्ट्रेटेड विद द हेल्प ऑफ द फॉलोइंग एग्जाम्पल। सपोज अ फर्म प्रोड्यूसेस शर्ट्स। इट स्टार्ट्स द ईयर विद एन इन्वेंट्री ऑफ 100 शर्ट्स। कितनी शर्ट्स बनाई हैं उस फर्म ने? 100। ड्यूरिंग द कमिंग ईयर इट एक्सपेक्ट टू सेल 1000 shirts. Hence, it produced 1000 shirts, expecting to keep an inventory of 100 at the end of the year. However, during the year, the sales of shirts turned out to be expectedly low. The firm is able to sell only 600 shirts. This means that the firm is left with 400 unsold shirts. The firm ends the year with 400 plus 100 equals to 500 shirts. The unexpected rise of inventories by 400 will be an example of unplanned accumulation of inventories. If, on the other hand, the sales had been more than 100, we would have unplanned decumulation of inventories. For example, if the sales had been 150, then not only the production of 100 shirt 1050, then not only the production of 1000 shirts will be sold. The firm will have to sell 50 shirts out of the inventory. This 50 unexpected reduction in inventories is an example of unexpected decumulation of inventories. What can be examples of planned accumulation or decumulation of inventories? Suppose the firm wants to raise the inventories from 100 shirts to 200 shirts during the year, expecting sales of 1000 shirts during the year. As before, the firm produced 1000 plus 100 equals to 1100. If the sales are actually 1000 shirts, then the firm indeed ends up with a rise of inventories. The new stock of inventories is 200, which was indeed planned by the firm. This rise is an example of planned accumulation of inventories. On the other hand, if the firm had wanted to reduce the inventories from 100 to 25, say, then it would produce 1000 minus 75, 925 shirts. This is because it plans to sell 75 shirts out of the inventory of 100 shirts it started with, so that the inventory at the end of the year becomes 100 minus 75 equals to 25 shirts, which the firm wants. If the sales indeed turn out to be 1000 as expected by the firm will be left with the planned reduced inventory of 25 shirts. We shall have more to say on the distinction between unplanned and planned change in inventories in the chapters which follow. Taking cognizance of change of inventories, we may write gross value added of firm GAV, gross value of the output produced by the firm IQQI minus value of intermediate goods used by the firm ZI. GVAI, value of sales by the firm VI plus value of change in inventories AI minus value of intermediate goods used by the firm ZI. Equation 2.1 has been derived by using change in inventories of a firm during a year equal production of the firm during the year minus scale of the firm during the year. It is worth noting that the sales by the firm includes sales not only to domestic buyers but also to buyers abroad. The latter is termed as exports. It is also to be noted that all the above-mentioned variables are flow variables. Generally, these are measured on an annual basis, hence they measure value of the flows per year. Net value added of the firm I equals GVAI minus depreciation of the firm I. If we sum the gross value added of all the firms of the economy in a year, we get a measure of the value of aggregate amount of goods and services produced. by the economy in a year, just as we had done in the wheat bread example. Such an estimate is called gross domestic product (GDP). Thus, GDP equals sum total of gross value added of all the firms in the economy. If there are n term firms in the economy, each assigned with a serial number from 1 to n, then GDP is sum total of the gross value added of all the firms in the economy, equal to GVA1 plus GVA2 plus dot 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 GVAN. Therefore, GDP sigma Ni equals to 1 GBAI. The symbol sigma is a notation. It is used to denote summation. Suppose there are three students having pocket money of rupees 200, 250 and 350 respectively. We can say if ith student has pocket money xi, then x1 200, x2 250, x3 300. The total pocket money will given by x1 plus x2 plus x3. The summation notation given above is useful in writing in a shorter form. X1 plus x2 plus x3 can be written as sigma 3 I equals to 1 sigma I, which means that there are three values of x corresponding to the three individuals 1 to 3, and we are referring to the sum of the values of x for individuals 1 is to 1 to 3. This notation is particularly useful in macroeconomics since we deal with aggregates. For instance, suppose there are 100 consumers in the economy having consumption C1, C2 and C1000. If we want to compute the aggregate consumption for this economy, we would have to add up all these values, which means aggregate consumption for this economy will be given by C इक्वल्स टू C1 प्लस सबको ऐड कर देंगे 1000 तक. The summation notation, however, allows us to write it in a much shorter form, since we are summing up the values of consumption for individual 1 to individual 1000, where the value of consumption for the individual I is C1 Ci. Aggregate consumption will be C equals to sigma 1000 I equals to 1 Ci. In general, if we are taking sum of a quantity xi over individuals 1 to n, it will be denoted sigma Ni equals to 1 xi. Expenditure method. An alternative way to calculate the GDP is by looking at the demand side of the products. This method is referred to as the expenditure method. In the farmer baker example that we have described before, the aggregate value of the output in the economy by expenditure method will be calculated in the following way. In this method, we add the final expenditures that each firm makes. Final expenditure in that part of expenditure which is undertaken not for intermediate purposes. The rupees 50 worth of wheat which the bakers buy from the farmers counts as intermediate goods, hence it does not fall under the category of final expenditure. Therefore, the aggregate value of output of the economy is 200 final expenditure received by the baker, rupees 50 final expenditure received by the farmer, rupees 250 per year. Firm I can make the final expenditure on the following accounts: A. The final consumption expenditure on the goods and services produced by the firm. We shall denote this by Ci. We may note that mostly it is the households which undertake consumption expenditure. There may be exceptions when the firms buy consumables to treat their guests or for their employees. The final investment expenditure I incurred by other firms on the capital goods produced by firm I. Observe that unlike the expenditure on intermediate goods, which is not included in the calculation of GDP, expenditure on investments is included. The reason is that investment goods remain with the firm, whereas intermediate goods are consumed in the process of production. The expenditure that the government makes on the final goods and services produced by firm I. We shall denote this by GI. We may point out that the final expenditure incurred by the government includes both the consumption and the investment expenditure D, the export revenues that firms I earns by selling its goods and services abroad. This will be denoted by XI. इससे denote करते हैं XI. Thus the sum total of the revenues that the firm I earns is given by RVI, sum total of final consumption, investment, government and export expenditures received by the firm I, equal CI plus I plus GI plus XI. If there are n firms, then summing over n firms we get sigma sigma n I equals to 1 RVI equals to sum total of final consumption, investment, government and exports expenditure received by all the firms in the economy, equal to sigma n I equals to 1 CI plus sigma n I equals to 1 II plus सबको क्या कर देंगे हम टोटल कर देंगे. Let CB aggregate final consumption expenditure of the entire economy. Notice that a part of C is spent on imports of consumption goods. C equals to sigma n I equals to 1 CI plus CM. Let CM denote expenditure on the imports on of consumption goods. Therefore, C minus CM denotes that part of aggregate final consumption expenditure that is spent on the domestic firms. Similarly, let I minus IM stand for that part of aggregate final investment expenditure that is spent on domestic firms, where I is the value of the aggregate final investment expenditure of the economy, and out of this IM is spent on foreign investment goods. Similarly, G minus GM stands for that part of aggregate final government expenditure that is spent on the domestic firms, where G is the aggregate expenditure of the government of the economy, and GM is the part of G which is spent on imports. Therefore, sigma n I equals to 1 Ci equals to sum total of final consumption expenditures received by all the firms in the economy equals to C minus Cm sigma n I equals to 1 II equals to sum total of final investment expenditures received by all the firms in the economy equals to I minus Im. Sigma n I equals to 1 GI equals to sum total of final government expenditures received by all the firms in the economy equals to G minus GM. Substituting these in equation 2.3 we get sigma n I equals to 1 RBI C minus Cm plus I minus Im G minus Gm plus Gn minus Gn I equals to 1 Xi C plus I plus G plus sigma n I equals to 1 Xi minus Cm plus Im plus Gm Ci plus C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Here X equals to sigma n I equals to 1 denotes aggregate expenditure by the foreigners on the exports of the economy. M equals Cm plus Im plus Gm is aggregate import expenditure incurred by the economy. We know GDP is equal sum total of all the final expenditure received by the firms in the economy. In other words, GDP equals sigma n I equals to 1 RBI equals to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Equation 2.4 express GDP according to the expenditure method. It may be noted that out of the five variables on the right hand side, investment expenditure I is the most unstable. Now it's income method. Income methods अब पढ़ेंगे कल.